Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the new StackVision Tools and How to Use Them webinar. Today we have our system support engineers, Megan and Mark. They will take you through the latest features introduced into StackVision and how to use them. With that being said, take it away.
Hi, everyone. This is Marc Sustaita. I'm going to go ahead and take this from the beginning. So this presentation is over new StackVision features. And looking over our agenda, we have three things that we're going to go over. First will be data rules. Second will be Process Now Advanced. And third will be the special features for emails through alarm messages. So taking a look at data rules first, this was introduced in the latest version, 7.6. Let's first go over what it is. So data rules is a new feature that was added. It's specifically for data processing. It is something that can go alongside scripting as an alternative that also allows for more complex config customization. And with this, you create rules using conditions and actions. And if you're familiar with programming, it's similar to if and then. And for why you should be using it, data rules can actually help replace some of the more complicated scripts that you run at your site. It is easier to set up and maintain than regular scripting. If you don't have programming experience, it's much more easier to do than Condition Manager and Xscript. It's a lot easier to troubleshoot because sometimes with Condition Manager and Xscripting, you have lots of little typos that can affect the whole thing. You don't really have to worry about that with data rules, which makes it really convenient. And you may also notice that for some of your scripts, you have to make a new script for every single site or source. For data rules, you can have one rule that can be run over different sources. So you only need to maintain that one. Makes it very, very convenient. So taking a look at an example of this, we're actually going to create a data rule live and then show how that relates to Xscript. So this is an example Xscript for just checking a limit. So in this example, we're taking unit 1 Knox tons. We're checking to see it's not missing, it's not invalid, it's not suspect. Finally, we're checking to see if it's greater than or equal to 600 and then less than 700. If all 5 of those are true, then it's going to mark that time interval as suspect and then trigger an alarm. So this is a super straightforward Xscript. Obviously, your Condition Manager scripts can get a lot more complex, but this is just a nice example that we can use for creating an example data rule as well. So as you can see here, we'll just go over here. If you want to do more than one source or parameter, these are hard-coded in the script. There are ways to get around hard coding, but it can get a lot messier. For data rules, they are run on a full list. So you can have the exact same process run more than once using a essentially template rule, which makes it a lot easier to maintain. So I will go ahead and try to make a example for this. So I have a test VM set up. I am currently in Stack Studio version 7.6, and I'm going to go over to data rules configuration, which is under the Process Now tab. So in here, first thing I'll have to do is hit add. It's going to make a new rule. I'm going to just make it a new set. We're going to call this limit. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and raise this to make it a little easier to see. I want to first check if it's missing, invalid, or suspect. So we're going to exclude missing, invalid, and suspect, which is perfect. And then we need to make sure that the value is greater than or equal to 600. So I'll come over to compare value to fixed values. I want this to be greater than or equal to, say this is 600. And then I need this to be less than 700. And then this is all for conditions. So this is the if. So it's going to exclude everything marked as missing, invalid, or suspect. And I want to make sure it's in between these two values here. And then for what I want it to do, I want it to commit an action. So I'll go over here. I want it to raise an alarm. This is an example, so I'll just come down to here. Is there an example exceedance? Yeah, here we go. I want to trigger the exceedance alarm. And then I want it to set the suspect flag. And that is it. We have a full data rule already set up. All we need to do is come down to parameter list, which is also available under the data rule section here. I'll go ahead and add. parameter list. We'll just call this Knox tons for an example. And I could set multiple sources here. And then for parameter, for each one, I just need to come down to wherever Knox ton is. This source I'm actually using may not have a Knox ton parameter. That's all right. I'll just come down. We'll just Knox inlet. Come down here. Do Knox inlet as well. And we're just doing this for every single source. This one doesn't have one, so we'll just do that one just as an example. And now we have a list that's going through 4 different sources, and it's selecting these 4 parameters. And I want to add this to my process now sequence so that when I run the sequence, it will run this rule against all the parameters in this list. So I'll go to process now sequence, hit add. This is an example daily process now. And I'll come down to data rules. Here we go. And down here, you can see that I just need to enter in what the rule set is. So we named this one limit. And then I need the parameter list name, which we named Knox tons. Put Knox tons here. And then you want to select the interval down here. So we'll say that this is a check against the 30-day limit for Knox tons. So I'll come over here and put the 30-day interval here. And that is it. We've completely copied whatever this X script is using data rules. So it's a lot easier to maintain. If you need to adjust which ones they're running on, all you need to do is adjust the list here. If you need to modify what the values are for that condition, you can change them in here. Definitely a lot easier than having to go through every single Xcode or X script condition manager that you have and editing those values, making sure there's no typos, and then testing it in process now to make sure that it runs. As long as you are following in data rules, there's no like double checking needed to make sure that it doesn't fail. It should just work. All right, and that is it for Xscript. So now I'm going to pass this over to Megan to talk about Process Now Advanced.
Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen really quick. Oh, we get caught up. I had it. Hold up. Sorry about that. So as Mark mentioned, we are going to go over Process Now Advanced and email messages as well. So while these are not new to 7.6, they're still relatively new. Process Now Advanced was released in version 7.4. And I've encountered a lot of people that have seen it but aren't familiar with what it is. So we're going to dive into it a little deeper. So you might be asking yourself, what is Process Now Advanced? Does it take the place of Process Now? Do I need to be using both? If I'm not using it, should I be? If I am using it, am I using it right? There's a lot of questions that go with the new feature, especially when it's related to something like Process Now that we use all the time, every hour. Some people run it more than that. Really just depends on your workflow. But what is Process Now Advanced? It is a tool that you can use to run specific tasks in a sequence. So if you're not familiar currently, the way Process Now is set up is you have different sequences that do different things. So you'll have a daily sequence that runs at a little after midnight over the last previous full day. You should have an hourly sequence. You can have special sequences for if you're trying to recalculate data or anything you do often. Sometimes if you're Mats, you'll have a specific sequence for that. And in those sequences, those are comprised of different tasks. So you can have as little as one task. You can have up to really as many tasks as you need. So if you're trying to recalculate data, if you need to update your averages, your day rolling average or your month rolling average, those are examples of different tasks that would be in your Process Now sequence. So what Process Now Advanced allows is it allows you to run one specific task or 2 or 3 or however many without having to run the entire sequence. And you might be asking yourself, why do I need this? Should I be using it? Process Now Advanced allows for easy troubleshooting or specific task processing, and you don't need to run lengthy sequences if you only need to run 1 or 2 tasks. So specifically, Process Now Advanced is great for, I see it most commonly used for hourly, daily, and monthly averages. If there was something that you need to update, let's say you just did a RADA and you fell a little bit behind because we're all human beings and you need to update your BAF, but you need it to run retroactively. It actually took effect a week ago, but you're just now entering the task. You don't want to wait to make sure that everything's working correctly. You can go ahead and enter that task in, and then you can run just the specific task that you need that'll update that BAF. So you don't have to wait until your nightly process now runs. If you're trying to use test an X script or a data rule like Marc just showed us, let's say Marc made that data rule and I want to see if it's working the way that I want it to, I could use Process Now Advanced to just run that data rule task. Regular Process Now is still going to be running even if you use Process Now Advanced. You can still run the full sequence. You can run multiple sequences. This in no way replaces that. Process Now Advanced is also very helpful for if a sequence fails. I recently worked with a customer who had some missing time online data, and every time their Process Now was running for about 8 units, it was failing on the UDR task. So every night at midnight, it would run. It would get about 20 minutes into the task to the sequence, and it would fail. So instead of going through and rerunning that task, that sequence, every time we were trying to fix the missing data, getting the parameter and time, fixing it, and then running it again, we were able to use Process Now Advanced to just run the UDR task, which only took about 2 minutes. So there were about 6 different parameters that were missing. So instead of spending an hour waiting for it to run, getting stuck on a missing parameter, fixing that parameter, rerunning and waiting, we were able to get it done in 15 to 20 minutes because it was only taking a couple minutes to run per task. Okay, so now I'm going to show where it is and what it looks like in case you're not familiar. So this is what the actual Process Now Advanced screen looks like. But in order to get here, you are going to open StackVision like you normally do, and you'll see it under Tools, and it'll be right under Process Now. So this is your regular Process Now that's going to run your sequences. We're all pretty familiar with that. This is not changed, but if you're trying to run just a specific task, which you've been able to do through the command line, but this is a lot more user-friendly. It's going to click Process Now Advanced. It's going to start, and you're going to see your sequences all over here. So if we were trying to run, like in the example I previously used, where their daily was getting stuck on UDR, what I did is I just selected their daily task, selected the UDR task, the date range that I wanted. There's some preset ones, previous day, current week, previous quarter, and you can also customize it down to the hour and minute if you'd like. If you have updated something for today and you only want to update from this morning through right now, you can do that. I don't have any actual data in this account, it's the test account, but you'll just click run, and similar to normal Process Now, this little icon in the bottom right corner will turn green and then stop when it finishes. And then you can see the updated data immediately in Data Lab if there's something that you're expecting, like if you're looking for the numbers to change or see a flag. So it's super helpful for troubleshooting. It's one of those tools that is awesome. You never want to assume that something is going to break, but if something goes wrong, it's a really nice skill to have in your back pocket to know it's available, it's efficient, and it works the same way as your normal Process Now, just a little more specified. So now we're going to move on to email messages, email alarms. So email alarms is new as of 7.3. So if you're running 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, or 7.6, you already have access to this. I think this is one of our most underutilized new features. Everybody, for the most part, is utilizing alarms in some way, shape, or form. But these updates allow the alarm email process to be significantly easier than it's been in the past. So it lets you automatically send out emails when certain alarms are triggered. You can customize inside of Stack Studio without having to program these long scripts or use BLAT. You can reuse the same alarm for multiple sources or parameters. And it's one of those things that you spend a lot of time initially setting it up. And then once it's set up, it runs without you. It doesn't require constant maintenance unless you're trying to update the recipient list. So if you want to update somebody's roles changed, you had a new operator, somebody left, you can do that way easier than you could before because that structure is already in place. So it makes it easy to update. You can remove, you don't need any server access to update the email details. The upkeep is significantly easier, and you can use special variables in the body and subject. And that's part of what makes that structure that allows you to customize it. So we'll look at that as well. So if you're not familiar with email groups already, that is something you're going to need set up in order to use emailed alarms. If you're not familiar with email groups, that's something you're going to set up under your user accounts in StackVision. So if you have, for example, you have your plant admins, you can have your operators, you can have your different groups of people that you want to receive emails. Maybe you want certain emails for 30-day exceedances to go to your operators and a certain number of people on your admin team. You can set up a group just for that. If you have alarms that you know you just want operators to see, or maybe you have alarms that you want to go directly to certain managers, you can do all of that through the email group. So you'll set up the email group for them under their user accounts, just adding their email addresses. That's done in StackVision. And then once that is done, you can go into Stack Studio and adjust that email group, customize the subject, and then what you actually want the body of the email to be, which I'll show you guys as well. But there are quite a few email variables. So you can do alarm name, you can customize source, parameter, interval, value, date, and then the return to normal date. So here's an example of what a Knox ton warning alarm would look like. So in Stack Studio, it's going to look like email subject, alarm, and then that variable, the percentage A for alarm, the source, and the parameter. And then the email body, we're going to set up to also have those variables, and it's going to show what the value is. So that instead of that percentage V, it's going to actually show the value was 1020, as you can see on the other side. So let's see what this looks like actually in StackVision. So for starters, if you're unfamiliar, this is where you would set up your email groups. You're going to, it's similar to your user accounts. You probably see it over here mostly, but this is where you can set up, you can have as many different groups as you want. I don't actually have any users in this account, which is why there's no groups other than just our ESC support. But once those groups are set up, then you can come over here to this alarm messages tab, which is under system settings in Stack Studio. And you can customize all of this information like we just saw on PowerPoint. So for starters, we can use let's see which one we should use. We can actually go ahead and create a new one. So we're going to name this one Knox. So from here, that's where I would select my email group. So if I wanted this to just go right to the operators, I could do that here. If what I want the email subject to be, so that's going to be the same thing we were just seeing in our PowerPoint, so you can make it alarm. If it's something, you can customize it if you want it to say like urgent, depending on the conditions you have set, you can do that. I'm going to do the percentage A so that it gives me, and then I also want to see the source because I want to know what unit this is happening on, and I also want to know what parameter in the email heading. So then in the email body, it looks like a small box, but don't be deceived. This is where you can enter whatever you want the email to say. It can say as much as there's an alarm, or as little as that. Or we can be a little bit more specific, like we were in our example, where we're going to have the same thing as the title, just for consistency. Something that I've recently seen with this as well is you can also put in the email body, if you would like, who to contact or who to reach out to if you're not sure. So this is setting the interval. Like let's say at the end, let's add, please check with Mark. We're going to put Mark as our person in there. So if I'm receiving this email and if I'm just monitoring and I get, oh, okay, our NOx ton is high, I'm not going to see all of these variables. I'm going to see what we were seeing before of unit 1 NOx tons with a value of 1020 was tripped on June 16th, 2025 at 1:15 p.m. on the 1 hour interval. Please check in with Mark, or please talk to Wendy, or whoever it is that you want to see. And we can also have a notification if we want for return to normal. If we want to send them an email, we can do the same thing. So we will use the alarm percentage A for that title. So that NOx ton warning alarm has returned to, let me scroll over so you can see, has returned to normal. That can be the subject, and I'm probably going to put something similar in the body as well of alarm return to the so that way you can know, but if it's something that you don't care to know if it returns normal, you just want to know when it happens, that is completely optional. So the nice thing is now that we've set all of this up here in alarm messages, it makes it super easy to come into our polling alarms, because this is just the message itself that is set up. So we're going to come under channels and polling alarms. And for the actual alarm, now I can create as many alarms as I want for whatever data controller. So we'll start with 1, and I don't want PM raw, I want NOx tons. Really any NOx parameter. We'll just use this tool. And I can set whatever interval I want. So let's make one for 1 minute. And I can use this pre-built that we just made. Warning. So this will be warning. So if I want to have any specific data flags, then I can. So right now I have this set up for 1 minute. And then if I want to make another one with the same thing, I can do it for 15 minutes. Super easily. Now that I've set up that structure like we were talking about before, it seemed a little tedious at the time and it took a little longer, but now I can easily add it for 1 hour. And all of those settings are going to transfer over. It's going to use it's going to have the same title. So it's also a very consistent way to get your alarms. There's not a difference in wording between the 1 hour versus the 15-minute, which can happen if you set different alarms up. Different people just word things differently. So I'm a big fan of the consistency. And I can do it for multiple different units as well. So that makes it super easy to just kind of plug and play those different variables as you want. And let's say Mark is going to go on vacation. He doesn't need to get these emails anymore. I can update either the email group in StackVision directly and just remove him from it, or I can come in to Stack Studio and I can change the email group to a different one because maybe all of Mark's team is on vacation or they're focusing on a different project. So instead of sending it to the operators, I want to send it to the operator B group. So I can do that, or the night shift instead of the day shift. I can do that just by changing the email group and saving. I don't have to go into a specific file. You don't have to get onto the server. It's that simple.
This is from Cindy Whitaker. Do data rules undo things that no longer meet the criteria?
I believe it does not do that. So if, for example, with the example that we had earlier, if something was marked as missing later, that data rule just wouldn't apply to it anymore. If you wanted to do something that undid another data rule, you'd have to make a separate data rule to handle that separate case for it.
Beautiful. All right. I think that was everything. Thank you so much, Megan and Mark, for your time today, and thank you everyone for joining us. And once again, if you have any additional questions, just send them to the marketing inbox or support. But thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.